The plane groaned as it descended through the turbulent Andean winds, the creak of its metal frame protesting every drop. Inside the narrow, dimly lit cabin, Sturmbannführer Erich Weiss sat motionless, staring through the grime-caked window at the endless blanket of dark green below. Argentina, far from the broken bones of Berlin, yet infected with a different kind of silence. He gripped the black satchel tighter in his lap, fingers white-knuckled. Within it, wrapped in oiled cloth and old German prayer paper, was the object he had sacrificed his soul to carry, the Münze des Himmels. He had never understood it. Not truly. None of them had. Only that it hummed when it was near metal and sometimes grew warm when he dreamt of fire. The old men in Himmler's circle had called it a gift, though even they didn't know from whom. Some said it was a relic from a forgotten age. Others whispered it had been found in the ice, older than the Reich and older than man. Erich didn't believe in ghosts, but he had watched what it did to those who touched it with bare hands. One man had spoken in equations for an hour before collapsing, blood leaking from his ears. Another had simply walked into the snow and vanished. "Senor Weiss," said the steward quietly, switching to a polished Spanish, "we will land in San Carlos de Bariloche shortly. Your contact is waiting." Weiss nodded but said nothing. The steward left him alone, perhaps sensing the chill that seemed to follow Erich wherever he went. Below, the landscape shifted. The mountains yawned open into dense, forested valleys, dotted with narrow lakes and clusters of wooden homes. Bariloche, with its quaint alpine facades and secrets hidden beneath a veneer of European charm, awaited him. Meanwhile, 40 kilometers away, Dr. Isabella Rojas adjusted the dial on her seismic scanner. The valley had been unusually active over the past month. Nothing dangerous, but the frequencies were wrong. Rhythms that didn't match tectonic movement. Some readings even suggested upward pulses, like pressure building from below. She had reported it to the university in Buenos Aires, but they dismissed it as local magnetic interference. Still, she knew this land. Patagonia had many mysteries, but this was different. She closed her notebook, her eyes narrowing as a low hum rippled through the equipment again. Not constant, but rhythmic, mechanical, like breathing. Isabella had been raised in these valleys. Her abuela used to tell her that certain mountains weren't meant to be climbed, that they were not just sacred but alive. Superstition, of course. Yet now, with the instruments twitching and her dog refusing to step past the tree line that led to Cerro Mirador, she felt that old weight settle again in her gut. In Bariloche, Erich's boots tapped softly against cobbled stone as he exited the plane hangar and was greeted by a tall man in a tan wool coat. The man's accent was German, but his words were Argentine clean. "You're late." "I came the long way," Erich replied flatly. "You still have it?" He glanced at the satchel. "Of course." The man gave a thin smile. "Then the alignment can proceed. The others are already at the site." They drove in silence, the trees pressing in on the dirt road like a narrowing throat. Erich's mind flicked through memories he tried to forget. Corridors of Schloss Wewelsburg, shrieks behind locked laboratory doors, and Himmler's pale hand resting reverently on the Münze. "You are the bearer now," the man said suddenly, breaking the quiet. "It will know if you're worthy." "I'm not here for worth," Erich said. "I'm here for completion." The jeep rounded a final bend. There, hidden beneath camouflaged tarps and fresh moss, was the entrance to a bunker that had no right to exist. Concrete older than its design, stone that didn't match the region's geology. The air changed near it, thinner, crisper, like the edge of a storm. Erich stepped out and approached the entrance slowly. The satchel in his hands pulsed once, as though it recognized the place. He did not. Inside, the corridor was colder than outside. Not with natural chill, but with a kind of absence. As they descended, Flickering bulbs lit the path with uneasy light. At the bottom, a vault door stood ajar, covered in glyphs too angular to be Latin, too uniform to be tribal. They glowed faintly, responding to his presence, or perhaps to what he carried. "They say this place predates us all," the guide whispered. "The Reich only discovered it because of the Eltari transmissions." Eric paused, eyes narrowing. "You believe in that?" "I believe in what I see." The chamber beyond was vast, a hollowed-out cavity of perfect symmetry, with polished walls that absorbed sound and time. At its center, a plinth of black stone, and atop it, a groove shaped precisely to fit the Münze. Eric didn't move. Instead, he studied the walls, the ceiling. Every inch had been carved or grown with interlacing patterns of geometry and purpose. The air smelled like ozone and ash. "This wasn't made for us," he said, more to himself than anyone else. "But we can use it," the man said. "Can we?" Eric wondered. He pulled the object from the satchel. It was cool now, metallic black with a faint shimmer that bent light unnaturally. He approached the plinth, hesitating just before placing it in the socket. Somewhere far above, Isabella's instrument spiked. The signal was no longer random. It was transmitting. She scribbled coordinates, panic rising in her chest. Something had been activated, and it was answering something else. Back in the chamber, Eric placed the Münze into the plinth. The lights died. For a second, there was nothing but the sound of human breath in the dark. Then the walls lit up, glyphs racing like fire across the stone, and the ground began to tremble. Not an earthquake, a response. The floor beneath Eric's feet pulsed. A deep, low tone rang through the air, impossible to pinpoint but resonant in his bones. His hands trembled. "It's working," the man said. No, Eric thought. It's waking up. He looked up, and the ceiling had vanished, replaced by a swirling violet sky that wasn't sky at all. Somewhere in Patagonia, something ancient had just opened its eyes. The ceiling shimmered like a veil of stars just beyond reach, but it wasn't the sky. It was a dome of perception, an artificial illusion projected by a force older than war or man. Eric Weiss stood beneath it, his heart beating in chaotic defiance of the low, synchronized hum reverberating through the ancient chamber. He couldn't tell whether the sound was emanating from the Münze or being pulled toward it. Around him, the walls pulsed in patterns of violet and deep crimson, pulsing not like machinery, but like something alive. "This isn't alignment," Eric muttered. "This is a response." The guide beside him said nothing. His eyes were fixed upward, wide and shimmering. He took a step toward the plinth as if drawn to it, mesmerized. Eric reached out instinctively, grabbing the man's collar. "Don't!" he barked. "You don't know what it is." But the man only smiled and whispered, "It knows us." Outside, in the foothills of the forest, Isabella Rojas sprinted through overgrown paths, clutching her worn canvas pack. Her equipment pinged sharply every few seconds, registering intensifying electromagnetic spikes. She could barely hear the birds anymore. Even the wind had gone quiet, like the world was holding its breath. She had traced the signals to a region marked off limits by the provincial government, officially a conservation zone. In truth, she had discovered, it was under private protection by former German expatriates, men and women whose records conveniently ended in 1945. As she climbed a steep rock face, she paused to rest, hands trembling as she reviewed the last digital image captured by her scanner. The frequency it recorded didn't align with seismic activity. It was a signal, repeating. Binary in structure, but irregular, like it was adapting, learning. Her jaw clenched. She was no longer documenting a natural anomaly. Something in that mountain was not just transmitting, it was listening back. Inside the chamber, the Münze lifted itself off the plinth, slowly rising into the air. It rotated, edges flaring with blue light. Eric backed away, the adrenaline coursing through him, overwhelming the disciplined numbness the war had instilled. He remembered the first time he had seen the object extracted from the Antarctic vault, buried under kilometers of ice, sealed in an obsidian capsule alongside diagrams no human hand could have drawn. They had unearthed it, believing it was a weapon. But even then, Eric had seen it wasn't designed for killing. It was a key. The question was, a key to what? "You were never meant to activate this," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We weren't chosen." The chamber pulsed in answer. 1,000 symbols flared along the walls, each one embedding itself into Eric's memory before fading. His knees gave way under the pressure of the sensory storm, and he collapsed. A voice, or perhaps a thought, emerged in the recesses of his mind. Not words, not a language, but something instinctual and ancient. You were a conduit, not a master. Outside the structure, Isabella spotted the concealed entry. Moss pulled back in patches, disturbed earth revealing a shape too symmetrical to be natural. She crouched, pulling a small handheld light from her pack and stepping inside. The temperature dropped immediately. Her breath formed clouds in front of her face, but it wasn't just cold. It was sterile, like walking into a sealed lab that had not been opened in decades. She descended deeper, the path curling into the mountain like a snake. Then she saw it. The door. Its surface shimmered slightly and glyphs lit up as she approached. A deep vibration passed through her chest, echoing her heartbeat. Without thinking, she pressed her palm to the surface. The metal warmed under her skin and slid open, revealing the inner sanctum. She stepped into the main chamber. Time didn't pass here the same way. Light and shadow twisted unnaturally. In the center, a man knelt beneath a floating object, rotating like a planet, humming with impossible energy. The man looked up slowly, eyes locking with hers. He was older than the photos she had seen in university archives, but there was no mistaking him. "Eric Weiss," she said. He didn't speak. "You shouldn't have come here," he finally said. "None of us should have." Isabella ignored the warning. "This thing, what is it?" He stood slowly. "Something we thought we could control. Something we dug up when we should have left the Earth alone. We believed it was a machine, that it could serve the Reich. But it was waiting, and now it's chosen someone else." Isabella felt it before she understood it, a warmth rising through her spine and into her skull. The Münze stopped spinning. It began to lower slowly, like a feather drifting in still air, until it hovered inches in front of her face. Eric stepped back, his hands raised. "It recognizes you." She was about to speak when the Münze flashed and embedded itself in her chest. No pain, just light. And then the world unfolded. She was standing in an alien city, impossible in architecture and vast beyond comprehension. Creatures like smoke and light walked among structures that floated and folded in real time. She saw the rise of the Eltari Empire, their obsession with order, their search across galaxies for compliant minds. But when they found Earth, they didn't see dominion. They saw chaos, resistance, failure. Humanity wasn't compatible with their systems. But something about human unpredictability had lingered in their archives. They left fragments behind, seeds, hoping that one day, when Earth fractured again, someone would come to them willingly. "You're the variable," Eric's voice called, distant. "Not chosen by heritage, but by cognition." She blinked, and the vision ended. The Münze fell from her chest, deactivated. It struck the floor and shattered into dust. Eric knelt beside the remains. "Then it's done," he whispered. "No," Isabella said, breathless. "It's just beginning." Behind them, the glyphs lit up again, this time not in welcome, but in warning. Something had been triggered, something that wasn't part of the plan. The warning pulses echoed through the stone like heartbeats. Irregular, urgent, wrong. Isabella stumbled back from the shattered remains of the Münze, its ashes curling upward in thin, iridescent strands before vanishing into the air. The chamber grew darker, the walls absorbing light, and Eric felt the shift immediately. Not just atmospheric, but dimensional. Something had noticed them. Something else. "We need to leave," Eric said, reaching for her arm. Isabella didn't move. Her skin prickled with static, but her mind was clear, expanded. The vision hadn't faded entirely. It lingered like a dream on the edge of waking. She knew things now. Not learned, but implanted. A star map danced behind her eyes, constellations shifting in unnatural geometries, drawing a path to places no human vessel had reached. She could feel the Eltari consciousness drifting near, just out of phase. Not malevolent, yet not benevolent either. They were indifferent observers of order, and now she had touched something forbidden. "I saw them," she whispered. "They weren't coming. They were waiting." A low groan echoed from the chamber's edge. The stone rippled as if it were liquid, and from the distortion emerged a figure, tall, robed, and faceless. Not Eltari, human, or once human. Its movements were slow, deliberate, its limbs just slightly out of sync with reality. Eric flinched, stepping protectively in front of Isabella. "No one else was supposed to know about this place," he muttered. "Only remnants remained. Survivors." The figure raised a hand. The air thickened. Isabella's lungs seized. Eric reached for the Luger at his hip, not out of hope, but reflex. He fired once. The bullet passed through the figure, hitting the stone wall with a clang. The figure remained, unmoved. Then it spoke, not through voice, but through thought. A language that bent Eric's mind sideways. "She bears the imprint. The gate can open." Eric staggered, blood seeping from his nose. He dropped the gun. "What gate?" he hissed. Isabella didn't ask. She knew. In her mind's eye, a structure unfolded. An interdimensional corridor forged by Eltari hands, sealed during the fall of their final Earth experiment. The Münze had been a beacon, a tool to identify minds that could survive the crossing. Isabella, through her intuition and chaos-born intellect, had activated a lock that hadn't turned in centuries. "I can close it," she said. "Whatever's waking up, I can stop it." "No," Eric said. "We don't even understand what it is." She turned to him, and for a moment he saw something flicker behind her eyes. Not possession, understanding. She had become more than she was. And Eric. He was a relic, a broken man holding the keys to a door no one should ever have opened. "The Eltari didn't conquer us because we were too chaotic," she said. "But that same chaos, the unpredictability they feared, was always the answer. It's what makes us resilient, what makes us human." The figure stepped forward again, reaching for her, but Isabella didn't move. She extended her palm, and light poured from her skin, ribbons of golden energy spiraling into the air, touching the glyphs that lined the walls. They responded like chords of a symphony, flaring in resonance, vibrating with a purpose that transcended language. The structure around them began to fold in on itself, not collapse, but retreat. Dimensions peeled back like pages turning. A second figure emerged from the wall, identical to the first, then a third. Specters of the past, echoes of the Reich's original contact. Not all had died. Some had merged with what they discovered. "Go," Isabella said firmly. "I'm not leaving you." She turned, not with warmth, but certainty. "You've already done enough, Eric. You tried to bury this. That was mercy. But it's awake now. If I don't guide it, they will." He hesitated, jaw clenched. For a moment, the years melted away. The uniform no longer mattered, nor did the lies and regrets. Just a man, standing on the edge of annihilation, trying to do one final thing right. He nodded once. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Isabella smiled faintly. Don't be. You led me here. Now let me finish it. He ran, through the corridor, up the winding path, past the failing lights and the groaning walls. Behind him, the structure's pulse quickened. As he emerged into the forest's cool night, the mountain behind him breathed inward. A flash of blue light erupted silently into the sky, vanishing before it touched the stars. Then, nothing. Silence reclaimed the valley. Later, when Eric reached the edge of Bariloche, no one would believe what he had seen. He vanished into obscurity, a ghost among expats and broken men. But the mountains never stopped humming, and somewhere, in a fold of reality that defied maps and memory, a woman walked through a corridor of stars, alone but unafraid. She was no longer just human. She was the variable, and the gate she entered was not a prison, but a beginning.